Taylor-Made Cards for You. Well, today we're going to make a really cute card. Now, I know what you're thinking, Monica, you don't make cute cards, you make grungy cards. But we're going to add a little bit of cuteness and combine it with a little bit of grunginess. How's that? I'm going to be working with these really cute dies from Life's Craft. And it's a cute little girl with an umbrella. And when I saw this die set, I thought, wow, this is perfect for spring showers, right? So I wanted to definitely get this made up before spring passes us by and we get into summer. Now the grunginess is going to come from a couple of items. From the Foundry Wax from the Distress line from Tim Holtz, and then I'm also going to be using some of the Distress embossing glaze to give it a little bit of texture. So let's go ahead and jump into our project here. All right, so for the little girl, I wanted to go ahead and do some paper piecing, but I wanted to share with you a couple of other ideas that you could definitely do with this die. Now, you could certainly just create a silhouette image using the black cardstock and not add any paper pieces at all. If you don't like paper piecing, you could use your Copic colors or your colored pencils to color her up. But I decided that I wanted to go ahead and add some different style of cardstock to create some paper piecing onto my image. So I started out with some white cardstock and I just cut the die to give it my background. Now when I paper piece, I kind of do it based on how I'm going to be layering it. I don't necessarily like to cut my pieces right at the line. I like to have a little overage so that way when I start layering my pieces, it looks a little bit natural. And as you can see here with her little galoshes, I left a little bit on the edge knowing I was going to cover them up with the dress. So that's kind of how I approach my paper piecing. And when you are paper piecing, remember, not every part of your image has to have cardstock. You can certainly do a combination of coloring as well as paper. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with this one image here where I've already added the umbrella and the galoshes. So now all I have to do is add the little dress, which I'm going to do now. So the piece that I'm working with now is part of her arm and it's going to give her a long sleeve shirt. So as you can see, I have a little extra hanging off of the edge and I'm going to just go ahead and tuck that right under the umbrella. Fortunately, when I glue down my images when I'm paper piecing, I kind of have some foresight and I don't add the glue all the way to the edge, knowing I may need to put something underneath it. So once I got her little sleeve exactly where I needed it, I cut off part of that piece so that way her hand was showing. Didn't necessarily want her to have a checkered hand, so I'm going to go ahead and color that up with some Copic colors in the end. All right, now I can go ahead and add her dress. So I'm just taking some of my glue. And again, when I'm doing paper piecing, I like to use liquid adhesive because it gives me movement time. I like to make sure that my piece is lined up exactly where I need it. And using the wet adhesive gives me that extra time. And now that I got all the pieces onto my white cardstock, it's time to add a little bit of Distress ink. I'm going to go ahead and use some Vintage Photo just to add some shadowing around the edge. Now you certainly don't have to do this, but because I did use white cardstock as my base, I want to go ahead and add some color around the edges just to cover up any of that white that might be showing. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into these mailboxes. Now, as you can see, I've been playing with these mailboxes for a bit. I really love the idea of postal themes. It's probably one of my favorite themes to create. It takes me back to the correspondence paper pack that Tim Holtz created a long time ago, which is probably one of my favorites. But anyway, so the mailbox was a really fun idea and I wanted to see what I could do to kind of grunge it up. So I used different mediums. I used just some Copic colors and then I added some Distress inks over it. I tried just the Foundry Waxes on their own. I tried watercolor cardstock. I tried glossy cardstock. There's a couple of ways that I went with this. And in the end, I found that the watercolor cardstock probably was the best because it had the texture to grab the mediums that I was going to be using. So for the coloring, I'm using some of the archival inks, and this is the Distress line. The colors that I'm using are Fired Brick for the actual mailbox and Vintage Photo. And as you can see, I'm just swiping the ink over the image, and it does have some creases, so it leaves some really nice indentations. All right, so with my ink still wet, I want to go ahead and add some texture to my mailbox. So to do that, I'm going to use some embossing glaze. Now, I certainly could have used the color Fired Brick, but I did again want to add a little bit of a rust color. So I decided to use the embossing glaze color of Rusty Hinge. And I'm just going to go ahead and be very generous with pouring over my distress glaze here onto my mailbox and then tapping off some of the excess before I actually add my heat tool to it. Okay, so we don't make a complete mess. Let's go ahead and put the distress glazes away, and let's get out our heat tool and go ahead and create some magic here. Now, when I'm using my heat tool to dry the glazes, it's going to give it some texture, which is wonderful. I love that a mailbox with rust can be kind of created with some of these images, and that's really what I wanted to do. I didn't want to create some pristine mailbox. I wanted it to be kind of like a country scene where you would go and find an old rusty mailbox where you can stick in a letter to an old friend, just something walking along in a meadow, perhaps, where you would find a mailbox. So that's what my inspiration was. A lot of times when I'm creating cards, I do think in my mind a little scene. I kind of create a story, if you will. And that's kind of the story that was in my mind when I was creating this card. Just some little girl walking in the rain, going to send a letter to maybe her grandma, something like that. All right, so once I went ahead and I dried my distress glaze, that's when I got out the Foundry Wax. Now, as you can see, I'm just kind of tapping it. I'm not really spreading it all over the mailbox. The Foundry Wax, once you dry it, will give it some shine. And that's what I really like about it, because it definitely does take on a waxed look. But I didn't necessarily want it to be completely covered, so that's why I'm just tapping it. And then once I have the coverage that I want, again, I'm going to take my heating tool to it to dry that Foundry Wax. And once you dry it, it is going to seal it. So any of that color that you might have had underneath is going to be completely sealed. All right, so I'm just taking a regular heating tool here and drying the Foundry Wax, and it doesn't take long at all. Once I have it dried, I am going to add a little bit more color on to the mailbox, just because, like I said, the Foundry Wax does cover it, and that's why I just tapped it rather than completely covered it. But I still want to get some of that fired brick color showing through for the mailbox, so that's where I'm going to come in right now and add a little bit more color. Now the Foundry Wax is great because, like I said, you can have color underneath it, and you can have color on top of it, and you're still going to get that waxy look. So it's a really great medium to play with, and if you haven't tried these out yet, I really recommend that you do give them a try. They're just a lot of fun to work with, and you're going to find if you like creating distressed vintagey looks, these Foundry Waxes are great for that. All right, so I went ahead and I added a little more of that fired brick, and then I came in with my vintage photo just to add a little bit more of a vintage look, because that's how I roll. Okay, so now we have our little girl with her umbrella all dressed up, and we have our grungy mailbox. So let's go ahead and put our card together. Now for the background, I wanted to have a background that had some raindrops. Like I said, I had the idea of her walking through a meadow, and then I would love to have had some raindrops, and I really didn't have any stamps or cardstock that would work for that. So what did I do? Well, I created my own. I am a digital creator after all, and if I don't have what I need in my stash, then I create it. So that's what I did. And as an extra bonus, I am going to offer you up these cute little postcard raindrop meadow sheets over in my shop. So make sure at the end of the video you stick around for that coupon code, because I'm going to provide that for you. All right, so I have my mailbox completely distressed out, and now it's ready to add to my cardstock. And aren't these beautiful? I went ahead and I created 4 different images on one sheet. One of them is going to be a horizontal, and one of them is going to be vertical. So you can create these fun little cards as well. So here I'm just kind of placing my images, trying to figure out exactly what I'm going to do. And as you can see, the vertical card is a little tight, but it still works. And since I had already created a horizontal card, I decided to go with the vertical piece. All right, so I got out my Beacon 3-in-1 glue, and I'm just going to go ahead and adhere my mailbox. Just kind of centering it, and again, I am using some liquid adhesive, so I do have some movement time to go ahead and place it exactly where I want it. All right, so once I have the mailbox glued exactly where I want it, then I'm going to go ahead and find one of those little letters and glue it to the little girl's hand. Now the letter die is also part of the die set, but as you can see, they're really small, so you want to make sure that you don't lose it, as I did a couple of times. But I went ahead and I had some of my little letters cut out, so I added some vintage photo around the edges. And I'm going to go ahead and just take some of my glue again and add it to the palm of her hand, so that way it looks like she's dropping the letter into the mailbox. And then once I have that letter glued to her hand, I'm going to just give it a few minutes because I want to make sure that it doesn't fall off her hand. So just give it a couple of minutes to dry, and then you're ready to go ahead and adhere her along with the letter to your cardstock. Now the die set also has a cute little handbag. So there's a total of 4 pieces in this die set. You're going to get the little girl, you're going to get the handbag, you're going to get the mailbox, and then of course you're going to get the little letter. So you're going to get 4 pieces total in this die set. Now what I loved about the purse is it really helped to break up that pattern for her dress. And while you don't necessarily have to add the purse to the little girl, I thought it was a really nice addition. So I went ahead and I got some cardstock without a pattern. I just got plain cardstock here, and it had a little bit of a green tone to match her outfit, and I decided to use that for her handbag. Okay, so once I added her handbag, then she pretty much was done. She was ready to be mounted onto some cardstock. But before I did that, I wanted to go ahead and get some color cardstock just to add as a base around the white. I felt it would help the background pop a little bit more, especially since I'm going white on white. So the cardstock that I'm using is from scrapbook.com, and it's the smooth cardstock collection, and this one came from the Harvest collection. Scrapbook.com has some really great cardstock colors, all different themes, which are wonderful. I think when they were on sale, I bought all of them. Because it's a really nice go-to. They're already pre-cut, and there's different colors in each of the sets, and they just work wonderful to be able to mount some of your cards onto the colorful cardstock. All right, so as we finish up the card here, let's go ahead and get you that coupon code. So the coupon code is going to get you access to the digital image of the postcard background, and you can use coupon code Spring Showers. I'll also stick that coupon code in the description box below. Now, when you're over at the shop, be sure to check out some of the other digital images that I have available for sale, along with the subscription plan. The subscription plan will give you access to all of the digitals in the shop for an entire year, so be sure to check that out as well. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up this card here and remind you, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button before you head out. And if you've enjoyed the video, I would sure appreciate a thumbs up. As always, I will leave links of all the products that I've used to create this card, along with that freebie code below. So be sure to check out that in the description box. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you again next time.